Hey everyone, it's Joe Gellatly again. Today I'm joined by Robert Siciliano, and I'm so excited to start this conversation. And I think we're going to bring some new ideas and a fresh approach to the ongoing topic of raising security awareness and maybe some other ways to look at that here with Robert as we get started. So, Robert, thank you for joining us. Can you open up with just telling us a bit about yourself and what brought you into the world of cybersecurity and develop that passion that you have for this world?
Yeah, my journey started off very young. At 12, I was mugged in downtown Boston by 5 kids, right? And I didn't know what to do. And I go home and my dad says, well, you're the antelope and they're the lions. I'm like, okay, I didn't quite get that. And then like a year later, I was 13 and I met a young girl that was sexually assaulted. Okay. Now back then, we're talking like 40 plus years ago, kids didn't know what sex was. Like it wasn't a common thing. Right. And so I go home, like I didn't really understand what she was telling me when she told me that her mom's boyfriend assaulted her. I didn't know what that meant. I go home and I asked my dad and he explained to me the birds and the bees and sexual assault in the same conversation. Okay. So my journey started off a little bit different than most. So from that age, I started to like recognize predator and prey. I started to see the world a little bit differently than the kids my age, And over the years, as a result of that, I started taking a lot of different self-defense classes and teaching personal protection to young girls and women in my life. And that became a small business where I spoke to real estate agents early on because real estate agents are murdered. Like that just happens. That's a real thing, And so back in the mid 90s, I got my first device. I got an IBM PS1 Consultant, that was the make and model, with Windows 3.0 and 150 megabyte hard drive back in the day, right? And so in order to sell my products and services, I had to get merchant status, which meant a dial-up connection to AOL. And I got hacked in 95. And so I lost thousands of dollars in credit card fraud early on. And that was a lot of money for me back then. But when it happened, being in the business of personal protection, right? Cybercrime wasn't even a thing back then. But when that happened, I was astonished by how effective they were and how easy it was for them, how much money they made in such a short period of time on my back, on my technology. And I said back then, this is going to be huge. Like this is going to be, if they can do that, like with a dial-up connection to the internet, what else can they do? So I started to focus on that. And by the late 90s, identity theft became a real thing. When your social security number ended up in the hands of a criminal and they opened up new lines of credit under your name. And so I started to see that and focus on that as well. By the early 2000s, I started to see like universities throughout the country having major data breaches. And it would make national news when 600,000 records would be compromised. And then a company called ChoicePoint got hacked. And ChoicePoint was an information broker. And the way they were hacked was a little bit different because they didn't really get hacked. They let them in through the front door. Basically, Nigerians signed up for their service and stole or downloaded or bought millions of social security numbers. And ChoicePoint only notified the residents of California back then because California was the only state in the nation that required a data breach notification, And ChoicePoint became the poster child for what not to do in a data breach. And so from that point on, like what I had to say regarding personal security evolved to information security because I was there. I watched it. It happened. And not much has changed since then. We've got
paranoia. You established that paranoia, healthy paranoia at a young age, and you've brought that to the cyber landscape, it sounds like, which now you don't necessarily want everyone to live under the fear all the time. Some of us just really have to take a very realistic look and then help everyone understand where they might be prey. And it sounds like you developed that early on. So you're bringing that lens to this.
I really have. And so what you just said, I want to flesh out a little bit. Okay. So my philosophy is that all security is personal. And coming from where I come from and my background, it would make sense, right? But what that really truly means is that it begins with the individual. Like it begins with your own physical security. Like all information security begins with physical security. So like I ask my audiences all the time, like, do you lock the doors to your house? Do you have a home security system? If I get 20 to 30% of the room to raise their hand, that's a lot, which means that like 70+% don't lock their doors or even have a home security system. And then when I ask the question, like, why don't you have a home security system? You know what they often say? I don't have a home security system because I don't want to live like that. And I say, well, what does that actually mean? Well, I don't want to have to worry. I just want to be free, which basically means I don't want to acknowledge the existence of bad actors. I'd rather just function in denial, which is what that really means. So we have, I think, a very unhealthy view of what security is and isn't in this country. And let me point something out to you. You just said the word paranoia, right? Like one of the questions I ask my audience is like, I tell them like a little quick story that I'm a guy that has, and this is true, 22 security cameras inside and outside my home in total. And I say, well, when you hear like this guy's got 22 security cameras, what words come to mind? What comes to mind? And I spoke in front of 200 CISOs. And I asked the same question. And all at the same time, simultaneously, 200 men and women went paranoid, which was kind of funny, actually. They're all looking at each other, laughing. And when we as a culture, when we as a society look at security as a form of paranoia, which is a mental health disorder, right? Which is somebody who is at odds with their universe. They are out of control. They truly do believe that others are out to get them. When we look at security as that, why would you ever want to embrace security? That dichotomy prevents us from effectively managing risk. And while there is a healthy form of paranoia, I think that most people look at security as a form of paranoia. I don't want to live like that. And they would truly rather function in denial that it can't happen to me. Therefore, they do nothing. They don't manage their passwords effectively, install two-factor authentication, lock their doors, install a home security system, have uncomfortable conversations with their daughter who's going off to college, who's going to end up inebriated at a frat party where 1 out of 4 college-age women are sexually assaulted. We don't have these uncomfortable conversations because we don't want to think these things can happen to us or our family or anything. So when an employee is force-fed phishing simulation training, they think, oh, my CISO, he's paranoid. He just makes us do these things. That's where most people are coming from, which makes security awareness training today very difficult for the employee to actually consume with the proper perspective because they've never been fed what the right perspective is. They're just force-fed security awareness training that is like taking a hammer and hitting them over the head with it. Whereas when you engage the employee in such a way where you make security personal to them, it's like using a scalpel and just kind of like getting them reframed, getting them thinking differently as to what security is and fundamentally isn't, so that they can consume security for themselves first. So they begin to actually like truly drink the Kool-Aid of what security is. So when you actually say, do this, don't do that, they go, oh yeah, that makes sense to me. I want to do that.
I love this, Robert. It's a great perspective shift. I think we'll spend a little more time here on making that practical for leadership, especially in our healthcare organizations we speak to a lot. Before that, we'll step back and just take the lay of the land and I guess elevate that level of what reality is right now from a predator and prey standpoint. As you said earlier, talk to us about who the predators are, especially on the cyber side. If we stay focused there, who are the criminals? Who are the bad actors? What are their motivations? What do they want as well?
The adage, a hooded criminal hacker sitting in his mom's basement. Sure, yeah, that still exists, right? And I hear all the time, if these criminals would just take what they knew and what they, how smart they are, and they could cure cancer. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. The reason is because in the 30 plus years that I've been doing this, I've come to the conclusion that 97% of all the people you're ever going to meet in your life, 97% are worthy of your trust, trustworthy, good people. which also means that about 2 to 3% are not. They come out of their mama bad. Those bad actors are what the medical establishment calls antisocial personality disorders, sociopaths and psychopaths, hardcore narcissists that hitting, hurting, harming, stealing is what they do. They are the lions. We are the gazelle. Okay. Who are they? Today, people say, well, criminal hackers, they're so sophisticated. Well, yeah, they're smart. I mean, they're computer scientists. What they really are is they're organized. Organized crime owns cyber fraud. That's what they do. And organized crime today is the UN estimates that about 300,000 men and women are currently victims of human trafficking solely for cybercrime. 300,000 people, slave labor. Their job, 18 hours a day, is hacking us, is socially engineering us, setting off those wrong number text messages, the phone calls, the emails, right? Communicating with employees, right? Spear phishing, everything to engage the human. And with 300,000 slave laborers with literal guns to their heads that are beaten and tortured if they don't make their quotas, they are in Southeast Asia, Myanmar, India, right? On compounds that are 85, 100 acres with housing, food, right? Barbed wire surrounding the whole thing, right? Technology. These are who are perpetrating these crimes. But again, the majority of the perpetrators themselves are actually victims of human trafficking. I've met them one-on-one in WhatsApp video, because when I get those wrong number text messages, I respond. I want to get to know who's doing it, and the majority of the time, because I'm a male, it's usually a female who I'm engaging with. And I get with them on video, and often they have, they usually have like a Russian model's face overlay in a voiceover or voice cloning. But I can tell that they're usually like a Southeast Asian female, right? And I never try to trip them up. I never try to scam bait them. I just want to learn and understand. And that's what we're up against. We're up against human slave labor, organized crime, where they have, and some of these compounds have like 2,000 men and women working all day, every day. And what they do is a form of advanced persistent threat where they're just going after the humans. That's what we're up against today. That's organized crime. That's the sophistication that we're dealing with now.
Yeah, you're touching on who they're using for that and what these organizations are, where they're based. What are the tactics, and is there an evolution of the tactics that are working based on the AI technologies available today?
Yeah. So look, humans don't manage passwords effectively, engage in two-factor authentication, recognize risk with emails effectively when the wrong number text messages come in. Hey, Robert, are we supposed to meet for lunch tomorrow? A lot of people just go, I'm sorry, who's this? Not even knowing to begin with that it's a fraud. And once they engage whoever is on the other end, that's when the journey begins. That's when you go down the rabbit hole. And so as a result of that, we're not dealing with any of these issues properly. We're just kind of like over our heads, not knowing how to react, not knowing how to respond. And most of the employees themselves don't know what to do when they receive a phishing email, never mind a wrong number text message.
Are you seeing any of the advanced AI technologies deployed yet? There's a lot of concern, especially, I guess, in the market, but a concern of the voice impersonation. You mentioned the video overlays. Have you seen that in the targeting, or is that's maybe what's ahead, but it isn't? We don't even need that to trip people up today.
That is so we don't need that to trip people up. That was my point. The fact of the matter is AI, deepfakes, and voice cloning is here and it's now. And the voice cloning is perfect. We cannot differentiate from that at all. At all. Like, the human beings don't have the capacity. Only technology can determine a deepfake voice. It is perfect. The face overlay, whether it's live or pre-recorded, it's not quite there yet as a consumable. Like most of the stuff that you get on, Google Play or Apple iTunes, all those apps that you can download, tools that you can get off the internet, the majority of them, if you're paying attention, you can tell. Like how the face contorts as it's speaking, how the mouth contorts, how the eyes match up with the mouth and so forth. Generally, if you're paying attention, you can tell. But the technology that is perfect is available. It's just not available for consumer use. The bad guys have access to most of the really good stuff. And that right there, my concern, I've been saying for 30 years, don't worry about any of this stuff. Just do something about it. I'm worried now. I'm worried due to the fact that we've got an entire culture that doesn't believe in security. We don't think it or want to believe it can happen to us. We're not engaging in proper security awareness to the level of what I call security appreciation. And now you throw AI into the mix, and human beings' first reaction to a phone call with your daughter in the background screaming, which is a complete, voice clone, is to protect your daughter. It's not to differentiate between real and fake. It's really, okay, what do I got to do to get my loved one safe? And that's how we're wired. And AI has flipped everything on its head, and it's here and now, and it's going to keep getting worse.
One of maybe the positives with the advance of AI video is I think there is some skepticism increasing in the general audience, right? Where they're calling videos out for being AI, where we have at least enough mainstream viral content that's AI generated that you're seeing some more skepticism, but maybe that's in different demographics too. I don't think it's the skepticism that our parents or our grandparents have adopted yet, and they're certainly targets of everything you're walking through. I would like you to break down security awareness versus, you mentioned security appreciation. What's the difference between those two concepts, and how do we start to think about that in our workplace?
Yeah, so most training that's being provided today is a form of compliance training. It's check the box, pre-recorded e-learning, either a talking head or some form of animation, which is necessary. But it doesn't necessarily, and that is what I call security awareness, right? That is security awareness. It's being aware. You're made aware of all the various risks out there, what to look for, the telltale signs, the red flags, do this, don't do that. It's an intellectual understanding of what risk is, right? I call that like from your neck up. Right. I understand. I'm aware. I get it. I understand that I should probably lock my doors. I should probably have a home security system. I should probably have identity theft protection or something called the credit freeze. I should probably have a different passcode across multiple accounts and two-factor authentication. I'm aware of all these things, and I'm aware of all the various solutions. Security appreciation, however, is that I understand what makes me vulnerable. I understand that I trust by default. I understand that as a human being, my default is, as an interdependent species, that I rely on and depend on others for my survival, for procreation. And as a result of that, trusting is my baseline, which means that throughout the day, week, month, year, when the phone rings, when I get an email, when I get a text message, when I meet people one-on-one, that I want to and I need to give the benefit of the doubt, that I want to believe in my fellow human being, that they are good in their nature and they don't mean to do me harm. And so when I walk through each day like that, I understand that I am at risk. And so security appreciation is, not only do I recognize that I trust by default, that I need to be a bit more skeptical, I need to recognize risk a bit more effectively. I need to change my behavior just slightly enough so that when I do get those text messages and emails, that I look at that as something that, as a bit of a challenge, like, okay, what's really going on here? And not only do I understand all that, but I appreciate the value that security provides in both my personal and professional life. So it's from the heart up. It's different. I actually have a warm feeling for security because it means something and it matters to me. And my philosophy is also that all security is personal. And it begins with the individual. It begins with their physical being, with their home, with their stuff, with their loved ones. And then that evolves to their digital security, password management, two-factor authentication, protecting their bank account and their identity. Security doesn't get more personal than your social security number and your identity, right? And so once they recognize how to protect themselves first, right? All security is personal. Then the phishing simulation training and all the other compliance-based check-the-box stuff makes more sense to them. They go from being aware of all these risks to appreciating the value that security provides in their personal and professional lives.
So I like this. So if we're going to work with our workforce to get them to appreciate, almost as you describe it, almost fall in love with security, they've got to have a high level of appreciation, what that brings. You're saying that's a building block to bring that appreciation to work. It's just a natural progression to understand why it matters at work if you embrace it as part of your living, the way that you live, right?
Doesn't that make sense?
It does. Yeah, it does. Have you seen employers do a good job of that? Do you have some? You don't have to name examples, but do you think that an employer can help bring that appreciation to employees, to the workforce, in a way that they build from the ground up, as you're describing?
Yeah, but it's not going to be done with the existing tools that are available, that are being widely consumed right now. The majority of the tools that are being consumed right now, their primary job is to check the box compliance, so many cents or dollars per seat. And as long as you can show due diligence that you did this, and the metrics do show that it works to a degree, and it solves the problem that it addresses to a degree. And if you're going to continue to engage in that basic compliance training, you are going to solve your problems to a degree. If you really want to move the needle, you've got to actually kind of change things up and shift things up a little bit. Look, prior to COVID, my business was, doing great, right? And I was on the road and speaking and training and live in person all the time. Then COVID hit and nothing, dead in the water. And then like some, live online stuff came in and kicked in, and that was great, right? But then it didn't take until maybe 2023 or 2024 that things started to pick up again. Why? Because companies were reaching out and saying, listen, we've been doing the e-learning, we've been doing the phishing simulation. What we're learning is that we just want our people to care. That's all we want. We just want them to care about security. Can you do that? That's all we want. So that when we actually feed them micro e-learning and phishing simulation, that they look at it as, yeah, I got this. I want this. This makes sense to me. Versus my CISO is paranoid. They're making us do this. They just want people to care. 2025 was my best year in business since pre-COVID, because companies are now realizing that you can only check the box to a certain degree, and it's really not going to solve the problem that you face. And the problem that you face is that most people function in a level of denial. It can't happen to me. They don't want to deal with security. Why would they want to hack me anyways? And that is a human problem. That's not a technical problem. That's not a technology. You can't solve that with software. You have to have look at most security awareness trainers are engaged in a monologue. They get up there, they tell you these are the risks, these are the problems, you got to do this. Otherwise, these are the repercussions. What's that going to, what is that going to solve? You have to engage in a dialogue. It is a conversation. It's actually like what we're doing right now. It's talking about the issues that we all face and why we resist security and what those obstacles are and coming around and looking at, the course of history throughout our entire lives and why we resist these issues and why we define security as a form of paranoia and why we trust so excessively and why we essentially avoid taking responsibility for these things because it's not my job. And once you break it all down in such a way where the employee looks at it as and says, oh, this affects me. This is about protecting me and my own identity and my loved ones and my children. Then they're like, I want more of this. I need more of this. What's next? What do I do? Where do I sign up? What do I got to do to protect myself? How do I protect the network? They want to do that. They really want to do that. You just have to reframe it. Yeah.
I One of the things that I love about this, your thesis here, and the framework you're describing, is it speaks to a problem that everybody in cybersecurity deals with. But when we move into an organization, when we're doing a security risk assessment with a large clinic or hospital that's been through a data breach, everyone in that organization has felt the pain, right? There is a different receptivity at that point where they say, take a look, tell us, what can we do better? What are we doing wrong? Where can we improve? Because they've lived through the front lines of the warfare that is a ransomware attack or a major event. Those are happening more and more often, but the big unlock for us would be, how do we get that reception and that appreciation of security before that event happens? And a lot of what I hear you saying is, bring it home, make it real, make it part of their life, make them understand how this impacts their day to day, even outside of work, and how it can protect them. That makes a lot of sense to me, in a way to speak upstream before some major event happens that just puts fear into everybody. I really like the healthy approach that you're describing. I appreciate that.
Your governance officers, risk managers, your CIOs, CTOs, CISOs, and so forth, they've been checking the box for as long as they've had to. We've got state and federal laws that we all need to be compliant, right? And that has worked to a degree. Like, I'm asked all the time, like, who's winning, the good guys or the bad guys? Well, the good guys are winning. The good guys certainly are winning. If the good guys weren't winning, the lights would be off. We'd be living like it was the 1800s. There'd be no clean running water. There'd be no electricity, right? We rely on the grid. The bad actors want us to be in the dark, right? They truly do. There'd be no, refrigeration. There'd be no gasoline to the gas stations. We would be living like it was the 1800s. The grid itself is only 120 years old, So the good guys are, in fact, winning. And that's great. Like, there's a lot of brilliant people out there. Like, I speak to the good guy ethical hackers all day long, right? And it's amazing to me what they're capable of. But with AI and the humans still not getting it, we still have not created a strategic human firewall. And I'm asking, like, all of these company officers to rethink how they implement security awareness. And I think that's a big challenge. And I don't know that, like, everybody really wants to make that change, or at least create additional solutions that require time and money. Or the companies that are offering the existing training, via e-learning, to change up their strategy. I don't know that they're willing to do that because they're making a killing. But there needs to be a shift, and when that shift occurs, I think we're going to begin to see a big change in the employee's attitude. And once that happens, you're going to see a return on your investments pretty quickly.
Love it. I've got two more questions I want to run by you. First, I think a lot of what you described, if you're a compliance officer and you're listening to this and you say, I just want to get started, and you're going to do it internally to begin. So you're going to start thinking about maybe good hygiene for your employees, the good cyber hygiene. What are a couple key maybe areas to start that everyone should be checking? If it's checking on their breach history or how they do passwords, where would you start for just protecting yourself at home?
The majority of the employees are leaving their, keys in their car in their driveway. I work with the real estate industry all the time, and the real estate agents tell me, that all over the country, that when they sell a home, that often the homeowner doesn't know where their house keys are. And I know, like, where I live, like, that's just not, people know where the house keys are where I live, But a lot of parts of the country, like, Midwest and so forth, people don't know where their house keys are because they moved into the house, they got the house keys, and they never picked them up again. They put them in a drawer, put them in a coffee can, and that was the end of it, right? We live in a culture and live in a society that we're just not embracing the actual fundamentals of personal security. And once you establish that with the employee, like just sit them down and have these conversations and look at from the very beginning where you're at, physical security, home security, and then get into the absolute basics, password management, two-factor authentication. Like it can't be any simpler than that. And once they engage in that dialogue, you'll start to see that the employees, like they don't have their basic 101 stuff in order. Most of us spend more time, energy, and effort on planning out where we're going to have dinner than we do on our, finances, on our personal security, on where we live or where we go to college or who we have for a mate. Like we don't really think things through regarding a lot of things in life. And security is one of those things that we just take for granted. We live in a relatively safe and secure society. We don't really look at security as something that is necessary. In certain parts of the world, like in Israel for that matter, since 1992, I believe, their building codes require by law that they install a safe room in every house and every home that is built. Whereas that's not even a thought here. We just take it for granted. But essentially, when you're living like they do, under attack, you think those things through. And some of the best technology companies on the planet are based in Israel, as a result, because they have the mindset for that. And there's reasons behind all of it. And if we can adopt just a little bit of the basics and get the employees to care, then I think that the risk compliance officers would be that much more successful.
Little narrow add-on question to that, and I think you've spoken to this a few ways through this conversation, but is fear the only way to get them to care? Is it just being more fearful of what's? I mean, that's a realistic thing, right? We can incur that fear, but is there another more positive way to frame how we raise their appreciation of security?
So I'm a dad. I'm a girl dad. My daughters are 17 and 20, right? And I've never sat them down and explain personal protection using fear, ever, not once. I would never do that to them. I don't want to do that to them. Like I love my girls. I don't want them to feel fear. I want them to understand, And so when I speak to them, and I've been educating my girls on good touches and bad touches since they were like 3, 4, 5 years old. I've educated them on personal protection and violence prevention since they were like 5, 6, 7 years old. And I keep having these conversations with them, and I keep introducing them to different self-defense trainings, right? And so the entire motivation that I have for my girls is that they look at the world around them and they process it like a little differently than others might, right? That they look at it as they understand and they embrace what risk is. That they look at it as something that they understand as it's a matter of there's no such thing as 100% security, but if I do these basic things and put these systems in place, I can reduce my risk and I can engage in tactics and strategies that if in fact I am, say, approached, that I know what to say, I know what to do, and I know how to react and respond effectively, right? And that same exact philosophy is done every single time you get an email, a phone call, or a text message. And if you look at security as it being personal, and you look at it as empowering people so that they understand what their role and responsibility is in protecting themselves first, again, then risk becomes one of those things that you just learn. It doesn't have to be about worry and fear, but in our culture, that's what we equate it to. Look as a species, that's what we equate it to. When we are young, I'm talking like, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, we generally just trust everybody around us. And then like we're playing with someone, right, at the age of like 4 and 5 years old, and Johnny in the playpen bites you on the arm. He bit me. Johnny bit me, right? Like physical violence. That actually happens. Your kid might have done that at some point, right? Because it's a normal, natural thing that kids do, right? And so we learn early on that not everybody is so nice. And that painful experience that we had of getting bit is something that we literally carry for our entire lives. We go through our entire lives like, I don't like what just happened to me. I don't want that to ever happen again. And so like we're a little bit skittish and a little bit worried and a little bit fearful. And we go through life like that. not really thinking these things through, that like going forward, what should I do in regards to being out and about and in the real world, and their predators and their prey, and how do I avoid this risk, and what systems do I need to put in place to reduce that risk and to protect myself should I be chosen to become a hardened target and so forth. Like, just think these things through. We don't do any of that stuff. We don't have these uncomfortable conversations with our loved ones because we don't want to think that our loved ones could ever be attacked, But like, while being attacked may not be the conversation that you want to have with your employees, at least thinking in those lines as to what security is and isn't, and what risk is and isn't, and how we are just adult children in an adult environment handling adult problems, often, this might sound condescending to some, often as our 5-year-old kicking and screaming selves. That's just what we are. We're just emotional humans that, worry, and we have fears and concerns, and, we don't want to be hurt. We don't want to think predators and prey. It's easy to watch that stuff in the movies. It's easy to watch true crime, but none of that stuff's going to happen to me. It happens in TV. It happens in the movies. We don't want to think about that stuff happening to us, but we should, in a positive environment, in a supporting environment. And when you understand risk, like, it's like anything else. It's like, building a cabinet. It's just, you use the tools that are available to you in a blueprint, and you spec it all out, and before you know it, you got a cabinet.
What I hear you saying when you talk about early about the interactions with your daughters, for example, you're instilling something in them. You're working from the inside out. I think you're instilling strength in them versus just saying, "Hey, it's a fear. Let's shrivel up and do the best we can to weather this." But you're instilling strength in them when you talk about this for employees in our employee base. I think a similar concept where you're giving them armor, you're giving them a shield, you're actually bolstering their confidence in this world and making it more about that than just they're out to get you as the only message we use to try to get compliance through fear. So I really like the way that you walked us through that perspective shift. I think is helpful for everybody to bring in mind as we approach education here.
I appreciate that. And I have a lot of friends that are, CIOs, CTOs, CISOs, and they're like, I need metrics. I need deliverables. I got to see the numbers. And I'm like, yeah, you probably don't have kids. When they say things like that, it's like because you can't raise a child with metrics. You could see results, but sometimes they take a little while. Sometimes it takes a little more encouragement. Sometimes it takes an additional conversation. Sometimes it takes time to kind of see things evolve in them as they grow and as they begin to understand. Like, it takes time. These things take time, and you can't engage in one. Look at cybersecurity month. You kidding me? A month? Like, it's cybersecurity year. Like, it should be all year long. It's not a month or a day. You don't do cybersecurity awareness training, phishing simulation training once. Like, when you wouldn't believe how many times I've had organizations say, "Oh yeah, we had a cybersecurity speaker." Okay, why? Because that 1 hour is going to change everybody's lives, and they're going to like embrace security for the rest of their life. That's it. You're done. That's it. It's over. Like, you'd be surprised, like, how what I'm up against. I don't see cybersecurity as even a profession in some circumstances, because they don't look at it as something that's needed or wanted or part of the curriculum. Like, no, this is a real thing that everybody needs to consume on a regular basis, not just once a year or one off. And having somebody come in and speak and train, doing like, all kinds of hacks and this and that, I think all that stuff is great to get people's attention. But I don't know that parlor tricks are ultimately what you want to change your employees' behavior. Hacking somebody's phone in real time, great. That's fun. That's amazing. Like, you're interesting. You got my attention. But all that tells me is we're screwed. Like, I think the real change in behavior comes with a bit of nurturing and ultimately creating a strategic human firewall and getting people to drink the Kool-Aid of what security is so that they will engage in it and appreciate it.
I think you've given us a lot of direction in how to think about that, how to approach it. But Robert, if someone wanted to, reach out to you, learn more about your approach, any ways you can help, what are the best ways to follow you? And even more so, what is your passion right now? What do you spend your time on besides educating audiences like this?
Couple things. So Google me, Robert Siciliano, if you can spell it. And then, of course, protectnowllc.com. So protectnowllc.com. And what do I do? Well, I'm in Boston, so born and bred. When people ask me that, like I tell them, I have never, ever parked a car in Harvard Yard ever, right? So I do have that accent. I'm a mariner. I'm in the Coast Guard Auxiliary, so I boat. We boated 27 times last summer. That's what we do. That's family time. Up the Charles River, Boston Harbor. I picked up my daughter in October on the side of the Charles River. She was at MIT at a soccer game and walked across a Memorial Drive. And we picked her up in the boat after a soccer game. That was kind of fun. So we boat, and I ride an 87 Harley Davidson. I boat more than ride, and I haven't had my daughters on it yet. I mean, I've had that bike for 30 years, and I haven't put my daughters on it. I don't know if I ever will. And I run the Boston Marathon for Dana-Farber Cancer Research. I've run 13 times. We've raised about $175,000, and I'll probably run again. Well, I'm signed up to run again in April. But after 12 marathons, you get to have ankle surgery. So my ankle's a little tweaked, and I don't know if I'm going to make it to the 14th marathon, but I'm signed up for it, and I'm going to raise the money for it.
All right. Well, thank you, Robert. And again, it's protectnowllc.com to reach Robert, or Google him, and we'll certainly have his information in the show notes. Again, I think you've presented a perspective that we really want our compliance officers and our IT leadership to understand. I really, really appreciate that. I think this is actually a new framework for me, and we've had lots of these conversations. So thank you for the education you're doing on top of a life well lived. And I appreciate your time, Robert.
Hey, I appreciate you and what you're doing. Thank you.